real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. So welcome back, everybody. Nathan Romas with you. Today, we are going to talk about drug addiction and one potential solution. Given the current state of the opioid epidemic, I thought the timing of this was worked out pretty good. And for us to explore some out-of-the-box ideas. For this, I have Inventor Neil Jackson on the show. Neil was diagnosed with chondrosarcoma in 2011. This is a form of cancer that affects the bones and joints of the body. Neil dealt with excruciating pain and was prescribed morphine and codeine-based drugs. He was then put on fentanyl, which was administered through transdermal patches. This led to a dependency. Neil invented FenBlock, a prescription-based self-control device that blocks the flow of fentanyl from a patch. This was done to give people control and freedom to get off fentanyl using their own timeline and with their healthcare providers' support. So welcome, Neil.
Thanks very much, Nathan. Nice to be here.
Glad we could connect. You're calling in from Virginia? That's correct?
Yeah, I'm in the Blue Ridge Mountains of central Virginia. Little town called Forest, maybe 4,000 people.
Oh, very nice. I'm glad we could get you on here, and I'm glad we could connect. I'm hoping this maybe kind of just helps people explore some options, because I mean, there's many options to kind of battling this opioid epidemic. So maybe this is one piece of a larger solution. So if we could kind of start at the beginning and tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're not an inventor by trade, I guess. You worked in finance and accounting?
That's right. Well, I started in finance and accounting when I was out of school, and then I worked my way into technology and became an IT specialist in auditing, security, and governance, relevant to those things. And I've worked in a lot of small organizations, and then my last large job was with the global director of IT audit and security for E-Trade Financial.
Okay.
So I spent there and traveled the world to see what's going on in the trading markets and the platforms and things. But it really gave me a good base as a risk avoidance type of person. And I mean, that's what basically audit's based on, is risk. And so I saw myself in many cases the mirror image of risk when I was, as you would say, dependent upon opioids, and fentanyl was probably the most powerful and the most hungry. It never stopped throwing out hunger pains. And the only time I can remember being in a euphoric state was at the beginning. Within hours after I first woke up from surgery, I was hitting the morphine button.
Okay.
And I was in la la land. But none of that ever came back to me once they got me into oral opioids. And so I spent 11 months, almost 11 months in the hospital in recovery. And when I got home, I was just given a huge dosage of drugs, all opioid-based, with the exception of gabapentin, which has in the U.S. become a controlled substance. And to give you an idea, I had 100 micrograms per hour flowing from fentanyl. I had 36 grams of milligrams of hydromorphine and hydrocodone, and then 24 milligrams of gabapentin at the end. And that's when I decided, this is really dangerous. It's not good. So it took me 3 months to figure out how to get off.
Well, so one thing I kind of want to ask about is maybe at the beginning of your diagnosis is what were kind of the options that they gave to you? So you find out you have this cancer. Do you kind of go through the initial like chemotherapy and different things to combat that. And then after all these things happen, that's when you start getting put on the painkillers?
In a way, chondrosarcoma is, first of all, X-ray and MRI don't detect it. It's very rare. It's non-curable when you're told that you have it.
Okay.
There's no cure. The only cure is like, I can remember my mother's friends and stuff. If they had breast cancer, the only options they had were surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the status of chondrosarcoma. There's no smart drug. There's no chemotherapy. Chemotherapy doesn't touch it. It won't do a thing to it. So when I got diagnosed, I was told, first of all, it's a non-curable disease. Okay, so your chances right at the gate are minimal at best to live. I got connected with the world's best chondrosarcoma surgeon at Mass General. I went to Mayo Clinic, didn't like the guy. Went to Mass General. I really connected with a guy who was more entrepreneurial in spirit, younger. And I figured that the other gentleman over at Mayo was an engineer turned physician turned surgeon. And I was really reluctant because if he found himself in a real problem, an engineer goes to a book.
Yeah.
So I sold this doctor, and he didn't like it, but he told this doctor, I said, look, I want an entrepreneur that says, okay, I got a problem. I'm going to go right through it. I'm going to find a solution. So anyhow, when we got to meet him, he told my wife and I that his team of specialists at Mass General and Harvard would give me a 1 in a million chance of coming through surgery. And he said, do you want to do it? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm not worried about it. So we got prepared. It took me 2 months to have some preparations done in the hospital. And then we had surgery. First surgery was 8.5 hours. Second surgery, 23 hours.
Wow.
And then we had subsequent more up to about 40 hours of surgery. But I was in intensive care with in a forced coma, medical coma, for about a week and a half to 2 weeks after surgery, because it was drastic. I mean, it was a big deal. Okay, probably 20 some people in the operating room working on me.
Wow.
So So they removed my my hip, my left hip, and my whole pelvis, and they replaced it. And the base of my spine. It was all wrapped. It was 8.5 pounds of cancer of this what's called the soft tissues, which becomes very hard. And they were able to get that out in one piece. It took them, I think, 14 hours of that part of the surgery to remove the tumor. Then they started to kind of patch me up. It took them another number of hours to do that.
Wow.
Close me up. Yeah.
Modern technology. Jeez.
Yeah, I was glad.
So as a result of the surgeries, that's when you start going on to these, I'll call them painkillers, as like a common vernacular. But so that's where you start getting onto these. When you go through that process, do you have a choice of anything that you're on, or any sort of, I don't know, other options? Or is it just, this is what you need and you get that? Oh,
yeah. There's no choice. In fact, at that point, I'm not saying everybody's possibly like me, but I had no idea, okay, that the cost of this would be significant pain, okay? But I would be a chronic pain patient the rest of my life at the time of surgery, and that they had plenty of good drugs that were effective to people in their 90s, and basically don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. You'll live a good life.
Yeah.
But what I learned later, the destructive courses that fentanyl does against your heart, your lungs, your brain, your eyes, all those kind of things. It's floating around your body, and it stores itself places where you don't think, like your heart. All your muscles are storing opioids all the time if you got them, and it's a vicious game, really, really vicious.
And is that even, so this is even under prescription, the doctors telling you how to take this or how much to take? it still has that kind of an effect on your body.
Oh yeah, and the effect is that you don't feel the pain. That's gone. That's gone. I never had a real problem of cognitive value that never affected that.
Hmm.
It made me tremendous mood swings. I had migraine headaches. I had severe nausea, and I had at least once a month severe depression where at any point life was of absolutely no use.
Wow.
So yeah, so I could say that somebody that is near suicidal, I was there, and I didn't have the courage to go the other way. I didn't have the courage to go through with it.
Hmm.
But I knew sitting there that I wasn't worth a damn. Okay, it's not that you think that. These drugs make you know that, and so if you don't have a strong family, you don't have a real center point of belief in Christ,
Mm.
and have a good God setting the path in front of you, and your faith that you'll be able to execute that path. I feel like these people, it takes a little bit of courage to end your life.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it. Goodness, I didn't.
Well, and one thing I was wondering too, when we had our prior conversation just before doing the recording stuff, was when you first start getting these medications, was it a particular one that almost gets you hooked? Do you have like that sense of knowing,
Mhm.
this has kind of got me now? And was it only the fentanyl that did that, or was it some of the ones leading up to it?
Well, you do have that feeling because uh, you ask for drugs when you're in the hospital more often than they're willing to administer drugs for pain,
Hmm.
and you know something's out of sequence. You got a doctor that knows your condition, and yet when you ask for a painkiller, they say we'll have to get the doctor's permission. And I'd say, well, there's something wrong here. He's already must have prescribed this. Just give me the damn
Yeah.
painkiller, and that starts to get a wider disconnect. And you find that this drug just demands more and more and more. And there's no way you could say I could put my finger on that. However, in looking back, I've learned that addiction to these drugs starts in 2 weeks
Yeah.
of use. Yeah. So once you're into it, 2 to 3 weeks, it's going to be up to you to measure when you can get off, and get off just as soon as you possibly can.
Well, when you're dealing with the doctors, like, do they, they're measuring or asking about your pain levels and stuff. Do they ever ask at any point, like, hey, do you feel like you can't live without this drug, or that you're becoming dependent, addicted, or whatever other level there might be in there?
Yeah, there's in the U.S. We're always dealing with the drug enforcement agencies,
Hmm.
and so the doctors, when they prescribe opioids, they're required to document, and justify why this person's on opioids, and to the degree that I was on opioids, I told you how many of them,
Hmm.
and the quantity. I was probably taking more prescribed opioids, my doctor told me, than any other patient in Virginia.
Wow.
So I had the attention of the FDA and my doctor. So he would always be a debater as to arguing with me as to, I'm not going to give you more.
Yeah.
He never asked me about tapering off,
Yeah.
because I was coming in with the complaint, boy, this is not lasting long enough. And, he never thought about, I really don't think he thought about that, of saying, hey, Neil, we need to get you starting to taper off to get this compassionate feeling that you need more drugs, get that to dissipate it in some way or another. Never did that, because I don't think a medical doctor at this particular point where I was in time had that type of practical instruction. I mean, he was dealing with me based on what he could probably learn in medical journals or online, and because I was very unique.
Okay.
Okay, I was I know I was told I was the most complicated patient in the state a number of times because the doctors that were following me, they couldn't understand how I could be living.
Well, do you know what your dosage was compared to what, say, a person on the street might use?
I would say 3 times as much.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the doctor basically they have to kind of answer to some sort of oversight body. Does the DEA or you said the other one was the FDA?
Well, just the DEA.
DEA, okay.
A Drug Enforcement Agency of the federal government.
So at some point they can actually step in and say, you're giving this person too much or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, they can take his license away.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I've never had a chance to talk to somebody that's had addiction to anything. But what I'm wondering is when you first start getting to that point, what does it feel like? How would you describe it?
Well, you've come to a sense that at that point you're normal. All right. It's the other people around you that you need to reach out and say, what does that look like? What does normal to me look like to you? All right.
Yeah.
And my wife would say, I think you're doing fine. And, but my children who wouldn't see me quite as often would notice changes. Okay. So, my wife would become accustomed because that's me. We're together. Right. But when I'm in once a week or once every 2 weeks or something, they'd notice a difference. They notice something, something was, basically not normal. And, but it wasn't anything of any severe consequence. I think what they felt was my mood swings, my anger curves were really off the charts. I was intolerable of my grandkids, kind of playing in our home.
Yeah.
At times, my wife was having fun with them. I would be sitting here, pent up with, I think, some sort of anxiety, maybe jealousy because, he's not playing with me. But it came out and basically unwarranted anger. And I noticed that. I mean, I didn't know what to do about that. I thought that was, once I learned how bad I was in the addiction side, then I knew that was something that I believed that if I got off the drugs, I would monitor in some sort of a diary and stuff. And it did. It was a measurable positive action of getting off, as I could measure by asking my family and friends about my attitude and all that kind of stuff. And I was able to say that everybody in the first 60 days to 90 days of me trying to taper off, were talking to saying to me, you're doing better.
Yeah. Yeah. People kind of notice that immediate change. One thing too that I was wondering is by the time you're kind of hooked on something, like you initially start taking the fentanyl for pain killing, and by the time you're hooked on it, is it still you're mainly looking for it for the purpose of getting rid of pain, or does it completely switch to I'm looking for like that euphoric state?
Now, you don't get the euphoric state. At least I, because I was tolerant of it. Okay, I was dependent upon it. But what keeps you involved in it is the unknown of the residual pain. That if I drop the volume of opioids, medication in general, what's going to happen? So I did some studying about the regrowth of nerves and things like that from surgeries, and they basically heal like an inch a year. Okay, they'll heal about an inch a year. So now I'm sitting at 7 years. Okay, when this all starts to occur, when I want to get off, and I figured, well, it's worth a try.
Yeah.
By tapering off in a graduated way, all right, on my own timeline, and making, if I needed to, I could make adjustments. I could take 2 steps back, take another step forward. If I felt like I was tapering too fast, if my diary or my feelings each morning told me something was askew, I would make a change. But I didn't do that, but maybe twice. And then throughout that time, residual pain was not recordable. I had none.
Hmm.
Once in a while, I would have, as I had surgery and I had a leg removed, I would have phantom pain. Okay. And I had never had that with the opioids. Okay. So I figured I knew what that was, but my cure for that was just Motrin.
Oh, really?
And I took Motrin and it went away. So I routinely have phantom pains, maybe, 3-4 times a year. And it'll take take Motrin to take it away, or Tylenol. I'll rotate from one or the other, but no other drugs. I don't take anything except Motrin or Tylenol.
So, we'll kind of getting toward talking about this FenBlock. What led you to make the change necessary to kind of develop this product? But also, was there stigma to receiving help?
Okay, we'll go to the first part first, which is probably the most enjoyable, since I'm hopefully talking to a Canadian audience. It was in August of 2017, and I'm home by myself, and my wife's working, and so I turned on our TV, and for some reason I went to C-SPAN, and C-SPAN was filming a presentation in the Rose Garden of the White House. President Trump had just been, put in office that earlier that year.
Mm-hmm.
His brother died of an addiction to alcohol. So, unbeknownst to me, one of his first executive orders was to set up a study of the opioid and other epidemics across the nation, and he wanted to have solutions. So the governor, Chris Christie from New Jersey, headed that study, and he was given the report. So I immediately went and downloaded the report. And they were telling the audience how deadly this opioid epidemic was to the individuals that are encountering it. And I called my wife during the presentation. I told her what was going on. And I said, those bastards are talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to get off. And she said, how are you going to do that? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to get off. So that's the answer to you first. It took me 3 months to study my risk, my implications, trying to get a baseline as to where I am against whoever I could pattern myself with. I found nothing. I looked and says, what are my options to get off? My options were alternative medication, okay, that would somehow cover the pain, but without an opioid. And my thought was, well, if I'm going to get off opioids, why would I want to become dependent on an alternative drug?
Yeah.
At what point do I want to get off of that? So it's either, you got to do it, okay, or you just give up.
Yeah.
So other option was rehabilitative services. When I investigated that and talked to several rehab centers around Virginia, I learned that mine would be, an in-house patient for about 30 days. And they said I would come out fine, and the cost was pretty high. It was about $8,000 a month. And to find out across the country, it can go as high as $80,000. So, I'm pretty much in an area that you could say was affordable, but not to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, plus the other thing, I don't want to give up control. I'd been in a hospital for 11 months where if I'd call, Dr. Nate, and I say, hey, I got pain, send me some more, drugs, right?
Yeah.
So over a period of an hour, you would decide whether I get them or not. And I didn't want that again. So, it's either make a decision and get off or just placate this situation and go under somebody else's rule. So that was my instigation to do it myself. And I had pills. I had oral opioids, a ton of those. We went through that, 36 milligrams of hydromorphine, hydrocodone. And that was easy. I took a penknife and chipped those away.
Mm-hmm.
In 6 months, I was off of oral opioids. My next task was the fentanyl patch. You can't bend the fentanyl patch. It's not effective. It won't stick on your body anymore. It won't transdermally flow. You can't cut it because it'll drain out of the bottom. And so what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I'm a working artist. And I looked over at my art easel and I saw artist tape. It was real thin. So I said, well, I'll see if that'll block some of the flow of that drug. So I put it on between my chest and the patch, put the patch over it. And 72 hours later, took the patch off, and the tape was just eaten up with the fentanyl drug. It had just destroyed it.
Wow.
So I said, well, that's not good. So anyhow, I played around. I found a material that was non-transdermal, and I sized it up to equal 10%, 15%, 20% patch barriers, and put those between my chest and my patch. And I began to graduate the tapering of myself off the drugs over the next 14 months.
Okay.
So it was a great experience. I had a friend who owned an engineering company. We were in his driveway talking, and he said, show me what you're doing. And I told him, and he said, that's a patentable idea. So that's how we got to talk to you. Because I would never buy anybody if I hadn't patented this mess,
Mm-hmm.
But that took a year. We won 3 patents. We have, both the use patent, the utility patent, and whatever you call it, the real patent, material, whatever it is, utility and use patents. And so we got 3 separate patents with both covered. We're good for microneedles to any type of drug patch that goes transdermal, and it worked. And so 2 years ago, I met with had a phone call from Francis Collins, who was in charge of National Institute of Health, and in his words on the phone with me, said, "I've never received or heard of a solution to a national epidemic until you."
Mm.
And he said, I'm going to transfer you over to my deputy director at National Institute of Drug Abuse. And his instructions are to mentor you to get the drug or to get the device patented, protected, and into a clinical testing facility in one of our university hospitals. So that took place. And then we're ready to go for clinicals. We had a budget of $3.5 million in grants ready to go. And COVID comes along, shuts it all down.
Yeah.
So we spent 2 years, fiddling our thumbs. At least they were going on to other research and clinical tests, but mine was waiting on the funding for the grant, and that was stopped. So I went on my own. I went private on it, and so I've spent a ton of money getting up with all the resources that will do the work, do the clinics, do the approvals and things like that to get this on the marketplace in the very near future.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And one thing that my audience might be a little more in tune with is the street use of drugs.
Yeah.
So among the homeless population, or you have younger generation getting into harder and harder drugs.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to try and make a connection between is, can this patch be used, or this type of solution are you looking at having this as a solution for people that might be using street drugs?
Absolutely. That's you come up with your initial version of a product, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You always have your enhanced version, either on the drawing tables or into research. And this was in research and development, and it's all ready to go. Okay. Again, it's got to go through the approval process because it's dealing with narcotics at that point,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the things that interested me in Canada is that you've got government that's licensing the production of some of these drugs, and they're doing that without what I would say an exit point. And another thing I've heard is an off ramp.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying trying to placate a section of the population that we really don't know what to do with. All right. But they call it a harm reduction program, when in fact, yeah, maybe you're thinking that you're reducing the ability of harm to that individual by keeping them on a particular drug, but you're actually killing them.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to be able to do, and that's what FenBlock 2.0 will open up the market for, is we've got an off ramp, and it's safe and it works. And if it works for fentanyl, the same principles, the same technology, give the person a prescribed volume of, say, cocaine or meth in the patch, and then use the technology of the barrier, of the FenBlock barrier system, to make, to progressively but gradually get you off of that drug. And then you go back to your provider, practitioner, your health practitioner, and they're the manager at that point. They're not a coach. I mean, these are people that need management. They need strict rules. So they go back there, and there's controls in place that, we know that you're not abusing the situation. You're not cutting that patch and taking that drug and selling it. We know we have the controls that are all ready to go that will answer those questions of your government. So, the United States has a real problem. All right. But we're not yet there to prescribing the replacement of what you and I would say street drugs, and some people would say narcotics.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Canada and a lot of countries around the world are doing that. So that's my first objective. My objective is to save lives. I don't care where they're at. But I think the ones in most need are those where the governments are more progressive in trying to resolve a problem by pretty much, covering it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not I'm not trying to be complaining of this. I think that they just don't know that there's a solution available. And now we have a solution. And my solution is going to come up with people with other ideas, which is great.
Yeah.
My solution is unique. It's a novel solution. It's called a de novo in the FDA. They look at it because there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like this. And they've never seen it before. Okay. So that doesn't mean somebody else doesn't have a better idea. Right.
Well, and it's just like you're saying, there's version 2.0, there could be version 5, once you get down the road, and somebody's got to start it. Somebody's got to come up with an idea at some point and at least get the ball rolling. And then, you turn it into whatever it needs to be. If yours is more pertaining to, say, people in, even if it was just solely focused on people that were in a hospital for incurable cancer.
That's right.
But we see all the time somebody invents something in the middle of the wars, and then all of a sudden it's used down the road 20 years later for some completely different purpose. They take a piece of that idea and make it work over here in this other area.
Right.
I think that's what we're kind of getting at when we're talking about this.
One of the good things about this is it's benefits to society. You're going to have less visits to the emergency room. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to lower cost. That's going to lower cost of government subsidies of emergency room services. Okay. And insurance costs, you're going to have a person who's returning to some state of normalcy, so the family relationships, their job relationships can recover.
Yeah.
You can recapture your freedom, from addiction. And so there's no downside to this. The downside is that until this product, FenBlock, was put out, I hadn't thought about the term, off ramp. I've always thought of an exit point. What's your exit point? Well, I didn't know one. I had to come up with one. Well, I've got one that works.
Yeah.
I'm living proof of it, and there was no withdrawal.
Yeah.
None. No withdrawal. Heart rates became stable. If I had not done this before COVID, my heart rate was so slow, my breathing was so slow, that an infection would have definitely killed me, as if I was obese, an obese individual with diabetes.
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't have been able. But the fact that this was timed the way it was, hey, it's fantastic.
Well, things all happen for a reason, I guess.
Hope so.
So one thing I want to ask too about was we talked a little bit about this before, was any issues with pharmaceutical companies or people, because everybody wants to talk about them nowadays, especially. But did you have any issues with either patenting the product or get blocked by anybody else in any way?
No, and in fact, several patents that we were up for review, my patent lawyers looked at, had to do with medical devices. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and the components of some similarity to what I was looking at. Okay, and you have to understand these large pharmaceuticals, they have just droves of people examining the patent office. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever your patent is released and you're authorized to have this patent, the pharmaceuticals are on it that same day. Okay, so we haven't seen any challenge to it at all. Pharmaceuticals in the United States are in the process, are in the production of fentanyl. They're in production of opioids, and it's a protected clientele. But if you get in a country like Canada, where it's more progressive, and in a way that's better for this product's availability, because you've gotten to a degree where you recognize not only is addiction a problem, but you're trying to solve it. And we can help, as you solve that problem, also help those people who want to taper off can taper off in a managed way. Okay.
Yeah.
The ones that taper off are the ones we're going to save. There's a group of people, about 60% of those that are left. If they knew there was a good, viable option, they would jump. They would take it. But the fact that they're not aware of a FenBlock, okay, system, they're only aware of alternative drugs or rehabilitative services, which are very expensive, and the recidivism rates are in the 80% and above. They're less likely to think that they're worthy of taking that chance. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
where mine is going to be reasonably priced, and more than likely, once the approval process goes, it'll be picked up by insurance, and if it's not, we'll have a way of helping the people who can't afford it get it. Okay,
Yeah.
So we're looking at the whole world out there.
Amazing stuff. So where is everything as it stands right now? So kind of, are we 90% of the way? Are we still waiting for certain things to happen? So where are you?
70%.
Okay.
70, but it's a long 70.
Yeah.
I would say that when I first sat down about 2 years ago to really work hard on this, after I had ended my addiction, I was saying, boy, this will be readily available probably within a year. I was ignorant of the necessary steps for clinicals and things like that. And once I got into that, we're looking at 2 to 3 years. Well, I've been in the private side of this, going through and aligning myself with the organizations and companies and things like clinics and stuff, that we can do this privately in an expeditious way, rather than going through state institutions, which are good, but they are, they're dependent upon their grants.
Mm-hmm.
Their grants are, the federal grant goes through the state to the state university hospital practicing centers. And so there's two governments involved in how that money's to be distributed. And it just slows the whole pace down,
Yeah.
Nathan. It just really does. So I'm looking at two different avenues. I'm also working with the Virginia Department of Economic Development International Group, who are in the process of setting up connections into your government, into governments around the world that we'll be traveling to. And so with their support, because they've seen this,
Mm-hmm.
with their support, our Virginia Commonwealth Attorney, Attorney General, he will be meeting with us shortly. He's asked to meet us and go through this. And then the international economic development people will be there with us. And so, we're way ahead of where we thought we'd be, but we're not yet ready to for market. But that's okay. There's a lot of people that I think once we get this available, will readily volunteer to test it and find remarkable results. And one thing I can tell you that in Richmond, Virginia, there's a hospital, a cancer hospital, that is just absolutely interested in this. They called the clinical evaluation addiction science group at that university, who I was going to have my product tested through, and asked if they had this product available for them yet. So there's a huge need, especially in cancer center, for something like this. And that's outside of addiction. They just know that these people have taken the drugs too long and they want to get them off.
So right now, you're the only test subject there's been, and you're kind of moving toward actually testing this in in real life settings.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that we just have to find, that path. And so we think that we can meet the path requirements of the Canadian governments, either in the French provinces or in the English provinces. We don't any hesitation to do that. Or again, the development group from Virginia, who are well versed in this product and other products like this, do this all the time, and they're jumping at the edges to get in there with us and make the right connections in your country, and then in several other countries around the world where there's notable problems, and they're looking for this solution. So,
well, that sounds like you're well on your way, and you're doing really good with this. I want to ask, just as we're kind of coming up toward the end of our time, but how are you doing now? And has there been any recidivism at all?
No recidivism at all. No, even an inkling of wanting it. And to give you an example, I kept all my patches that I didn't use sitting next to my bed. And my wife would say, "Why do you do that?" I said, "Just to remind me of where I've been." And it was, everybody would say, "Well, that would be a temptation." Well, the funny thing was, no, it just gave me a reward. I mean, I was taking 20, 30 pills a day.
Wow.
And then I was putting a patch. Sometimes I put 2 patches on because I knew that I needed more. And as a drug user, you hoard for a rainy day. Okay. So I was able to manipulate the prescription side of it. I found out the drugstores told me that the insurance company would allow me to get that renewed 3 days before the renewal date. So you take 3 days over 7 years, and you're getting a lot of patches, a lot of pills, and you don't need them.
Yeah.
So I had hundreds of hydromorphine and hydrocodone pills, and I had 50 fentanyl patches.
Wow.
50. And so that's got to change.
Yeah.
The practice of how the issuance of these has got to change. The insurance companies are getting ripped, and you're putting more valuable, drugs on the street, and we can stop that.
Well, and that's how we get into people selling their drugs on the street, right? Yeah. You can just keep getting the refills.
Yeah, I got a bag of those pills, and they're worth $10 a piece.
Yeah. I know. We have the same issues up here.
Yeah. So now you got to change. Now we're going to give you an off ramp. We're going to give not just you and your country, which is our favorite country too, right? So we're going to give us all an off ramp. We're going to give us an opportunity to bring common sense back into this, and I think that when we straighten out family lives and we save people from committing suicide or feeling depressed and just abusing the drug, and it's not only on their behalf, they find themselves just being in a habit of abusing the drug. Yeah. So why you go back on stigma? I look at stigma when I look at it as a political term. I don't see it as anything negative to me. I think if I came out of it with the words action, 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 off ramp, end point, exit point, and then FenBlock. And then the other words I use is a reality check. Yeah. So we can bring all this back to positive things, and we can tell people if you feel like there's a stigma, be proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not there for yourself. You're there because of other circumstances that put you there, and it's time to take a reality check.
Great words. I think that's. I think we get a good point across here and show a connection that there's the stuff that's used medically, which leads into some of the street drugs. Hopefully, somebody can listen to this and kind of take a piece of it away and come up with further solutions, or get a hold of you, which I'm going to give you a chance to do here. How can people follow you and your work?
Well, let me say one thing. If we can,
Yeah.
you can slice this, but I was a week away from going to the street.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would have been on street drugs if I had not quit.
Yeah.
That was one of my goals. So if somebody's listening and he says, "Well, that guy never got near the street," I was 1 week away. I'd call my friend who was a pharmacist, and I asked him. I said, "Where can I get this if my doctor stops prescribing it?" He said, "There's tons of doctors right around your house that'll prescribe without ever seeing you." And I said, "Well, how about street drugs?" He says, "They're all over the place, Neil."
Yeah.
So that really was a wake-up call to me that I better get off. I'm in real dangerous territory. How they can get in touch with us is our website is FenBlock, FenBlock, MED, like medicine, MED.com, FenBlockMed.com. All my contact information's there. Phone number is 434-509-2999 in the United States.
I'll and I put those links up on the episode description when it gets posted too, so people can find you and find the website if they got further questions or can help you in any way. I think that kind of wraps everything up that we were going to get to. Can you hang on the line for just a minute? I'll say bye offline, but while we're here, I just want to say thanks again for coming on, and I think you kind of shed some light on some major issues that we do have out here. It's both Canada and America share a lot of the similar issues. So we're glad you could kind of come on and talk about some of them.
Yeah, I am too, because a lot of times you just get people that are in authority and in service situations and not practicing addicts. Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're a real addict. Okay. I've recovered from it. You know, I still have a family. All my health systems are perfectly good. I'm 74 years old and I lived through it. And so they can too. And our prayers are with them. And we're here for the right reason. We have a mission to save lives. We're faith-based and everybody can trust what we say.
Great.
How about that?
Awesome. Well, thank you. Hang on the line for just 1 second.
All right. Bye. Thanks.